Hi, good evening. Good evening, everyone. Just waiting for people to join in. And uh, I had been waiting for this live for a very long time. I tried to devise what all I'm going to speak about in this live. Uh, Almost throughout the entire week, I thought about it. And then finally today, I listed down the different topics that I wanted to talk about because the the concept of today's life is about how intergenerational trauma actually looks like. People, I know that I keep talking about inherited family trauma. I keep talking about traumas that are passed down from generation to generation. I talk about traumas that come from mom, traumas that come from dad. Um, but at the same point of time, many people ask me, how do these traumas, how does it look like? How do you know that this is intergenerational trauma and um, that this is not childhood trauma, or this could be something else, this could be a part of my own behavior, my own experience. How do you know that these things that people experience are intergenerational trauma? They come from somewhere else. They don't come from our life's experiences, or maybe they do come from our life's experiences, but our life's experiences feel like as if they are experiences of someone else, right? So, welcoming all of you, a formal hi to everyone, and people who are watching me right now, could you please drop a hi or hello so that I know that you can hear me well, and everything is done, everything is connected well. You and I at this moment are well regulated, let's say that. Okay, so please do drop a hi or a hello or a good evening, whatever you feel like. And thank you once again for joining in. So today's topic is how intergenerational trauma looks like. What are the symptoms? What kind of stories do people live? And what kind of solutions can we expect, right? So when we look at intergenerational trauma, we must understand that these traumas are inherited in nature, right? These traumas have begun way before we came into existence. These traumas became a part of our being, our narrative, our genetics, even before we were born, even before we were conceived. So the preconception time is also important. Some traumas can be passed down to us while our mom is pregnant with us, which is our conception time, right? But most of intergenerational trauma, when we talk about, are patterns, experiences, stressful events, traumatic episodes from time where we are not born, we are not conceived, we haven't entered mother's womb, our body hasn't found life. Okay, so that's intergenerational trauma. So most of these traumas that are in the previous generation, that when we look back in our generation, most of these traumas are, how they look like. Maybe some ancestor or a grandfather was a part of a war, and people experienced the suffering and the pain and atrocities of being in a war. In a previous generation, someone may have committed suicide and it was never talked about. Let's say there are multiple abortions that are present in grandmother's generations, or great grandmother's generation, or maybe great 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 grandmother's generation, and no one knows about it, and neither is it talked about. Maybe dad's elder brother or grandfather's elder brother committed suicide or died in a brutal accident, or died prematurely very young. Maybe he or she got drowned in a river or a pond, right? So all of these family tragedies that happen many, many years back, including stories of partition, stories of Holocaust, right? Stories of migration and movement, and having to let go of one's country, one's home, one's resources, one's money, one's finances. These kind of stories that have happened many, many years back leaves its residue, leaves its traces. And all these events that I just talked about, the suicides, the abortions, the migrations, the evacuations, the accidents, someone committing suicide, all these stories that I talked about are present in the family system. The family is a system, right? The family is composed of many people. Father, mother, grandfather, grandmother, fathers, brothers and sisters, mothers, brothers and sisters, grandfathers, brothers and sisters, right? So it remains in every single person, because everywhere we haven't acknowledged these traumas, everywhere we haven't seen or known about these traumas, everywhere these traumas have remained invisible. Each person is going to feel the effect of these traumatic events. How do they experience this effect? The effects of these experiences are not analyzed in the brain. They are not present in our episodic memory. They are present in the body language of all the people who are there in the family, right? Imagine a grief, imagine a tragedy, an accident, a suicide. How does it affect the entire family? Imagine a family which had to migrate or lose their belongings or home, or maybe they had to let go of their entire business or lost a lot of money. How does it affect the entire family? It affects the entire family because every person's stress response, every person's attitude towards life, every person's perception towards love, affection, safety, threat, how secure they feel in their homes, or how secure they feel inside their own bodies, are affected, isn't it? So it's present in the body language of every single person from the family, right? Now, going back to how does intergenerational trauma look like? So because intergenerational traumas have happened way before we are born, way before we came into existence, they are not a part of our episodic memory. They are not a part of our step-by-step analysis of memory, the way we experience memory, right? For example, if I ask you, when was the first time you, let's say, had an ice cream, and you will go back and you will describe to me that, oh, I was 5 years old and I went to school and then I met my friends and this and this and this happened. So that's how you describe an episodic memory, right? This episodic description of memory and the way you recollect it is called explicit memory, or declarative memory, the memory that you can describe because you know when it happened. It's a part of your life's experience, right? However, all these traumas that have happened in the intergenerational line that have remained in your system does not express in the form of this episodic memory. It expresses in the form of implicit memory. For example, it's not in your thinking brain or analyzing brain. It's in your body. How does it show up in your body? For example, you and your friend, both of you walk into an office where the environment is toxic because everyone shouts and screams and maybe each person blames the other, and you are able to feel that you have boundaries, you are calm, and you can manage your emotions well. However, your friend experiences it very differently, goes into anxiety, goes into panic, heartbeat increases, pupils dilate, cheeks flush, and the hands begin to tremble. So there are a lot of body symptoms, but you both have walked into a toxic environment. So it's possible that your friend may be carrying certain reactions, certain energies, certain dysregulation of his or her nervous system that they have inherited from their not only previous generations but also from their mom and dad. What I'm trying to tell you is how our body reacts in stressful environment is a clear reflection of how inherited family trauma may show up in our body. There is this famous psychiatrist and head of the department of the trauma and stress department in Mount Sinai Hospital in New York. Her name is Rachel Yehuda, and she had done research on the second generations of the Holocaust survivors. And she found that all these people who are the second generation of the Holocaust survivors have lower levels of cortisol pool in their body, which means that in stressful environment, they don't have enough of skills to deal with the stress, right? Because in the previous generation when the Holocaust was happening, a lot of the pool of stress hormones were used up, because of course during the Holocaust people had to be hyper aware, hyper vigilant. They had to constantly look out for threat. They had to constantly ensure their safety, right? So when it came down to the second generation, the pool was depleted. But then they also found out that all of these people who are the second generation survivors of the Holocaust victims, they found out that all these people had faster reflex responses. They could, if you throw a spoon at them, they would catch it faster than a normal person, which means that their reflexes are so strong simply because their ancestors who were part of the Holocaust, where they had to be hyper aware and hyper vigilant, where their reflexes went up, that was also passed down. So it's not just trauma that gets passed down, it's also skill sets that also gets passed down. So other ways by which intergenerational trauma can also show up is, you reach a certain age, maybe you reach 35, maybe you reach 42, and suddenly a feeling that never existed in your system shows up. Maybe you are going on very well with your spouse and you have a beautiful relationship, and suddenly you reach 45 and you feel that you are no longer in love with your spouse. You no longer want to be in that relationship. You almost want to move away from that relationship. And maybe when we explore and we decode, we find out that your dad left your mom at around 45, 46, or maybe dad's dad left his wife, which is your grandmother, at around 45, 46. And we are feeling his void in our pattern, in our romantic, intimate relationship. Other ways by which inherited family trauma can again show up is recurring patterns that don't seem to end. There are times when people fall into these financial patterns and they are unable to get out, because it's possible that one of our ancestors lost money, or maybe dad lost money at a certain age, and we are having an extremely successful career and we are doing very well. But the moment we reach around the same time, around the same age as maybe dad does or grandfather does, we also begin to feel that our career is dwindling. It's all the money is going out, our business is falling, right? So even in these patterns that may show up, inherited family trauma can appear. And also in the kind of illnesses that appear at a certain age. So maybe you do not have a history of, let's say, high cholesterol, right? And then you reach 38, maybe it suddenly shoots up. It may happen overnight, it may happen over a month. And then you realize that there is a linkage, there is a pattern of cholesterol shooting up in certain individuals from your family. While of course there is a genetic reason to that, but there are also epigenetic reasons to that. And by now you all know, and if you don't know, you must also Google and read more on epigenetics. That epigenetics is this study where it's a department, it's a field of science wherein it is shown how our inner and outer environment affects certain gene expression. I gave the example of the tumor suppressor gene last time in my Insta Live, that we all have this tumor suppressor gene which does not allow any cell to grow beyond its limit, right? But then certain environmental stressors or epigenetic markers or DNA methylation or histone bodies, they can affect this tumor suppressor gene, as a result of which everything that they were suppressing moves out, right? It goes off. As a result of which, again, uncontrolled cellular division can take place, but it doesn't happen in all people. It only happens in certain number of people. Why is it happening that way? Because in some people, there is an environmental stressor, right? So essentially, inherited family trauma or intergenerational trauma lives in our body, shows up in our body language, shows up in the way we become anxious, stressful, fearful in certain environment, shows up in our most grave illnesses, shows up how we express autoimmune diseases, shows up in our intimate relationship with our spouse, with our partners, shows up in the way we have midlife crisis as well, shows up in how we manage money and belief about money and the way we hold our career. So it can show up in a lot of ways, but most of the times all of these ways are so unconscious that they don't appear in the conscious realm, and you can't decode them, you can't analyze them until you begin to look back and see that, oh, these were patterns and these were illnesses and these were feelings and attributes and characteristics also shared by people before me, my parents or my grandparents, or maybe people even before them. People went through migration, people went through war, people went through evacuation, they had to let go of business, they had to let go of their resources, their homes, and that's a lot of trauma, right? That's a lot of trauma. I also said that I will be talking about stories in this live, and one of the stories which I keep sharing and it keeps coming back to me is this story of addiction to heroin. And I remember I was doing this method called family constellation, which I usually do with a lot of people to figure out where their ancestral traumas are. So I was doing family constellation with this young boy who was going through a heroin addiction. And we found out that there is father and there is father's eldest brother. And father's eldest brother goes through a terrible phase where he ends up committing suicide. And then many years later, this boy who goes through not just severe depression but also falls into addiction and into heroin, in the constellation, in the family constellation therapy, we find out that he is almost identifying with someone who has died in the family. He says, by going through this addiction, by ingesting and injecting heroin, I almost feel that I want to walk in the path of death, as if there is a pull that is calling me towards death. And then it becomes very clear when we do the family constellation therapy that he is almost merged and identified with the experiences of his father's brother, which is his uncle, and he's almost following unconsciously his uncle and walking towards the event of death, destructions. In another case, I remember I was working with a woman who went through severe anorexia, and even there we had one of father's siblings, father's sister. She died a terrible death, and father could not grieve it at all. He could not express his pain, he could not process. And therefore, what happens is that gets again percolating down. It comes down to this young woman who, in the constellation therapy, is merged, is identified with this dead ancestor, father's sister, and her inner language, the language I call it the language of the soul. Her inner language is, dear aunt, you die, so I'm also going to walk in this path and diminish myself, and I'm also going to vanish like the way you vanished. These are different kind of statements that we make people say in family constellation therapy, where they identify that they are carrying experiences of someone else. By going through their destructive life experiences, they are identified and merged with someone else who may have died prematurely, who may have died young, who may have committed suicide in the family, and it was never talked about. So, Freud had said that, and also Jung had said, that whatever remains unresolved shows up by a certain individual in the family again and again. But what I say is, whatever has been excluded, if a person has not been talked about, if a grief has not been addressed, if a pain has not been felt, if someone has been ostracized, if someone has been excluded from the family, all of these exclusions are going to show up later in the generation by someone else who will walk on the same path and will move in the same order. And that is exactly what happened in the case of the heroin addiction as well as in anorexia. There was another case wherein there was this woman who felt that she was so lonely, and she also had severe dysmenorrhea, pain during the period. And she said that I don't even have any experiences, but any childhood experiences. We worked with her childhood, and we did not find even any history of going through abuse or something of that nature, something which is traumatic in her own life. And when we were exploring her family line, again we were doing family constellation, and finally it got revealed, and even she knew about it, but it had escaped her memory. So she found out that her grandmother, which is her mother's mother, went through multiple abortions. The pain of losing children, because the family wanted, maybe because the husband wanted, maybe because it was a girl child, for whatever reason it happened, the pain of losing children the way she did, the pain of not being able to save their life, the guilt of not being able to be there as a mother, the guilt of not being able to protect remains in the body. As I said, it remains in the somatic memory, it remains in the implicit memory, and that is inherited by this young woman who goes through this dysmenorrhea, painful cramps during periods, menstrual cycle. So she's identified again with her grandmother's experiences, and she experiences exactly in her uterus. That is the organ where all the trauma and all the pain of the grandmother is stored. Now, identifications and following and repeating someone else's trauma can also be your own siblings. I have had multiple cases where people tell me that, I feel I'm not living my life fully. I feel I'm not living up to my full potential. I feel sometimes that in the middle of life there is nothing to live for. I feel an empty void. And most of the times, all of these people may have had a sibling who either died young, or who was aborted, or who was miscarried by their mother, as a result of which, when something of this nature happens, and this child who dies young, stillborn, or miscarried, or aborted, when this child is not talked about, not given any acknowledgement, this child is even not talked about to the child who survives. then the surviving child carries the fate, the experience, the energies of this child. So if this shrinks and dies and goes into oblivion, then this person who survives feels immense guilt to live a full life, to live a complete life, as if by living a full life, as if by living a complete life, they will somehow end up betraying this brother or sister of theirs who could not survive. So we not only carry the experiences and traumatic events, not only from our parents and from our intergenerational line, but also someone may face midlife crisis and may not know that the emptiness and the void that they experience in their life, in the mid of life their light goes dim. All of this can happen as a result of the unrealized grief, the unrealized pain, the unacknowledged existence of a sibling who may have died young, or a sibling who may have been miscarried, or a sibling who may have been aborted. So these are different stories and different cases, and you will keep finding them in various areas of your life, be it your intimate relationship with your partner. Your body will tell you if you carry inherited family trauma, because you will find out that when your romantic partner comes towards you, does your body tighten? Does it cringe? Sometimes do you feel like pushing them away? Do you feel like rejecting them? Do you also feel that despite they love you so much, you still feel abandoned and rejected? And the situation doesn't make sense to you because you don't understand your body impulses. Then all these body impulses may not be yours. It could be coming from someone else in your family line. Similarly, how do you behave with money? How do you behave with your finances? Do you make money and money just flows out by itself? Are you unable to save money? Do you constantly fear that the money that you have will be taken away by someone else, or you will be looted, or you will be cheated? But these experiences have never happened to you in your life, or maybe you have not even heard about these experiences from your parents' life. It is possible that someone was truly looted, someone truly lost all their money. Maybe there is a grandfather or there is a great-grandfather who had to let go of all the money that he had. Similarly, you know that you are a healthy individual, and you exercise and you eat well, and suddenly when you reach 42, you experience deep amount of pain, fatigue, exhaustion in your body, and you are unable to explain that why do I feel like this? I live such a healthy lifestyle. I eat, I exercise. Why am I feeling this way? So if at, let's say, 42, 45, or maybe 35, suddenly a sudden onset of symptoms or illnesses show up, it is possible that someone else went through a debilitating illness at that age. Maybe someone lost their mind and was put into a mental institution at the age of 36. Maybe a grandfather or a grandmother, or maybe grandfather's brother or grandmother's sister was put into a mental institution at the age of 38 or at the age of 39, and she lived a very lonely life, suffered through it, went through all the traumatic experiences, and when you reach 38, when you reach 39, almost the same age as your ancestor did, you feel that all your life energy is depleting, all your life force is going, you are entering exhaustion, and maybe you are losing your mind. So this is how inherited family trauma can also show up. When we do family constellation is a three-dimensional process by which we find out where in your generational line are these traumas located, where are the roots of your issues, and to whom does it belong that you are carrying. So when we decode and when we let the field do the work, then we finally find out that, okay, this is where it is located in family constellation. And when we do that, there are a few things we do in terms of solution, and you can do it yourself as well if you happen to identify where your traumas are located. Number one, when we identify the ancestor, we first of all honor their fate. We honor their suffering. We do not reel under guilt. We don't we don't demean it. We don't disacknowledge it. We honor it. We first honor their fate. If there is a grandmother who went to an institution and who lost her mind, we will say, grandmother, I honor your fate. I know you suffered, but I'm still willing to honor your fate. If there is an uncle who committed suicide, then we look at that uncle in our inner image and we tell him, uncle, I love you and I honor your fate. Whatever you may have done, you may have had your own reasons, but I honor your fate. That's one. Second is, after honoring the fate, we do a body process, somatic process, to release all our feelings that we are identified with that particular ancestor, so that we can let go of it, so that we can breathe it out, so that we can release it. When I work with participants in my family constellation programs, I make sure that I work with their bodies. Why? Because the trauma is not here in the head, it's in the body memory. So I make them do breathing exercises and release it to the ancestor, because the brain now understands the story and the body is ready to let go of all those dark, tightening, stiffening, deadening energy, right? So by body work, we release all that energy. And then third, we also include them. Their story was not included. Their pain was not talked about. Their grief was not acknowledged. They were not addressed. So we tell them that, uncle, grandfather, grandmother, you are included. You belong to this family. You are a part of us. And you are a part of my heart. And I will take you in my heart and I will carry you. Because inclusion is what will bring strength to our soul. Not exclusion, not by disacknowledging it, not by trying to forget it, not by trying to push it away or rejecting it, but by bringing it into our heart field and carrying it with us. And then fourthly, sometimes I ask people to do a ritual, or I ask them to write a letter of love to this ancestor whom they may have never met. When you write these imaginary letters, your body is able to feel more relaxed, because your nervous system, which was once dysregulated, right? Your nervous system was dysregulated when you went through all that anxiety and depression, you went through the addiction, all of that, your nervous system was dysregulated. When you make a connection and you are able to let go, and you're able to express your love and receive that love from them, then your nervous system begins to regulate. So writing a love letter to a deceased ancestor, or even to a living ancestor from whom you may be carrying your trauma, helps you to regulate your nervous system. And lastly, we always seek their blessings, so as to restore the flow of love. You see, when people are excluded, when people are ostracized, when they are not talked about, when their grief is not acknowledged, the flow of love that was supposed to come from them to maybe our parents and then to us is interrupted, is broken, right? So in order to restore the flow of love, when we give them a place in our heart, and when we join our hands and we bow our head down to them, that flow of love is restored, and our body is able to process all that love. Our body is not only able to let go of all the negative experiences, traumatic experiences, and there is a bulb that lights up that says that, oh, all these, dark thoughts and these beliefs and feelings that I was carrying, all these anxieties, was never mine actually. So I'm now going to breathe it out to them, and I'm going to seek their blessing, so that all that light, all that blessing, all that love, and all the regulation that my nervous system experiences can become a part of my body and my experiences. And that's how you break your pattern. In my family constellation workshop, I talk a lot about these methods, and in fact I make people do them. And that's how I work with people, by working with their somatics, by trying to figure out their intergenerational trauma, by making them aware where the root of the trauma is, and by finally bringing a sense of inclusion to them so that they can finally break that pattern, break that trance that they have been carrying because they were carrying so much of burden from elsewhere which does not belong to their own experience, to their own life. It's from elsewhere. That's what family constellation is all about. And to tell you, on 23rd, 24th and 25th October, we have this constellation workshop program for all you people who can come and work with me together. It's called The Secret Language of Love, uncovering and resolving the roots of inherited family trauma. And everything that I talk to you about today in this live is what I will do in practice, experientially, with people who will be coming for this workshop, for this program. So if you happen to be interested, we just have 12 seats remaining, then you should DM me and I will connect you to my team who will get in touch with you and will give you all the registration details. So we have only 12 seats, of which 6 have already filled up, and we have just 6 seats remaining. And by the way, if you also are keen about breaking the patterns of your financial life, your financial reality, which also, as I mentioned, how are reflections of inherited family trauma. Let's say if grandfather went through a business loss, then we may also feel compelled to lose our business at a certain age. If father felt unsupported at a certain time in his life and could not progress in life, we may also feel stuck in our career. So that way there are several thousands of dynamics that can happen, that can come from our inherited family trauma into our financial reality. So if you're interested in resolving your financial reality, then I also have a course called The Truth Behind Your Financial Reality, which is an online course. So if you're not able to make it to the Family Constellation program, then you can take my streamable course, The Truth Behind Your Financial Reality. It's a streamable one, which means that I will not be present with you live the way it is, but it's an 8-hour divided into 4, 2 long videos which will guide you step by step and which will help you uncover and discover all the blocks and the true roots of where your financial reality is placed, where you experience blocks, you experience dead ends in your own financial life, and you will find that out as you go through the course. So if you happen to be interested in the truth behind your financial reality, again, you should DM me and I'll connect you to my team. So I just have one comment which says, this is just amazing. My mind is blown all over again and I love it. Can't wait to experience the upcoming Family Constellation program. So I'm so happy, Shruti, that you mentioned this. Even I am looking forward. You know, I haven't done an offline Family Constellation program in more than 2 years now. And I'm so looking forward to this program because, you know, in offline work, I can work directly with the body of the client. Because as I said, all the inherited family trauma and the impulses and the stiffening and the tightening and the anxiety and the body responses and how we respond when our partner comes close to us, or how we respond in a stressful environment, lives inside the body. It does not live here. So that's why the other day I also made this post that we cannot talk and resolve trauma. We have to go inside the body, and through the body we have to release the trauma. And more so if it's inherited family trauma, because then the brain had not formed to process all of that, because either we were in our mother's womb or we were not even conceived. So it is living in our bodies, right? So in order to do cellular memory release work, we have to do somatic work. And that's why I love offline constellations, because then I can do all the body work with the clients and with the participants and help them release generations and generations of trauma. So if you happen to have any questions right now, please do go ahead and type. I don't see any questions at this moment. So please do go ahead and type questions if you have, and I will be happy to answer them. And while people are typing or not typing, I'll again tell you that on 23rd, 24th and 25th October, we have our offline family constellation program called The Secret Language of Love, uncovering and resolving the roots of inherited family trauma. Till 20th of September, we have an early bird prize going on, and after that we will have two late bird and regular prices. So the earlier you register, the better it is for you. And along with that, as you know, we have a streamable course, meaning the course content and the videos will be sent to you, and you can sit at the comfort of your home and open up your phone or your laptop or your iPad or whatever and attend to the course and resolve your family trauma associated and linked to your financial reality, called The Truth Behind Your Financial Reality. So thank you so much. I don't see any questions. I will come back next Monday to talk more about intergenerational trauma, talk more about these topics that are not talked about often. Thank you so much. See you then. Bye-bye.